Okay, I'll just hit the record button now, mate. So we're in the live, in the chat, and thanks for joining me again, mate. And so late in the afternoon for you anyway. So hopefully that didn't inconvenience you at all, and you and your family.
No, not at all. I'm not doing much else. I'm in
Yeah.
lockdown. I'm looking out of windows, really. It's been snowing.
It's almost like you're held hostage, and I'm sort of, just entertaining you, or you're entertaining me, and in that sort of space of time.
It's like being under house arrest,
Yeah.
But we're okay. We're getting by. Everybody's safe, and that's good. It's late for you, though, isn't it?
What time's it now? Nearly 1:30. Yeah, it's not too late. Usually I go to bed around about this time anyway, through the week. But because it's a weekend, mate, that's all right. Still party time, mate. Got the whiskey out, celebrating after a long podcast.
A couple of years ago, a friend bought me a bottle of Japanese whiskey that was gorgeous. It was really nice. I don't know what you're drinking, but
it's Canadian.
I know I really like the Japanese whiskey, so there we are. But never mind. Okay,
it is good, mate. It is, yeah.
Yeah, what have you been doing? What's your week been up to? Much gaming?
Actually, I had a game with John Webb, who I did the podcast with just now on Epic. We had a game of Epic actually, remotely.
Right.
Fab. And it was good. It was really good. Really enjoyed, because it was the first game I played after quite a number of months not having played it. And yeah, it was really good because John hadn't played an actual war game through remote play before. So this is a kind of a new experience for him. He really enjoyed it. I think we'll try to continue that in the future as well with other games. But he's mainly done it from a board game perspective. So board games work really well, as we probably talked about last time with remote play, because you're working with a grid and the spaces. You just say, I'm just going to move up 4 spaces, blah, blah. There's no sort of, having to try to mitigate things, minutely with movement and measurements and that kind of stuff. But with Epic, it's like a very small scale, as you know, it's like 6 mil, very, very small little pieces. So it's hard to pick up on the camera at times and that kind of thing. But we sort of overcome that, and, we sort of work together and that kind of stuff. And it worked out well in the end. Yeah. But
good. I'm glad you enjoyed. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that being played as well, which is something I haven't seen a lot of, but I know it's got a little bit of a thriving sort of hobby base, isn't it? Which is great. So well done.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
I've had a good week. Look at it. My lizard men are coming on really well. I was hoping I've got one figure. I'm looking at him over there to complete my first Saurus unit, which I'm really excited about, actually, especially after our game last week. I really enjoyed that. Which was nice. I had a few things come in the post this week, which has been good. Look at this.
Wow, so, nice, man. Awesome. Yeah. You didn't get any polyhedral dice, did you? Get any polyhedral dice in the
No,
mail
I'm still waiting. Every day the postman comes, I rush down the stairs, but he's not here.
Where's my bloody dice?
I know. I did make a mistake though. I thought this was the rule book, and it's not, is it? Right?
It's the battle book.
It's
that's a beautiful book.
I can remember, but it's such a good. But I was looking at this and I thought, what is the appeal here, right? The appeal of this, which makes it so different from the newer stuff, is this is really accessible. You look at the pictures in here and they're beautiful and they're stunning, but I genuinely think I can do something like this. I can do it, I can game on the tables they've got. I can put those figures out without, it being way too much. And then what really got me at the end, there's this lovely picture at the back here, look, with the Perry twins. And on their sort of dream table, and that dream table, I can remember seeing things like that and thinking, wow, what would it be like to have that in your house? That's just amazing. But when they show the battle reports and things they do these days, all the tables are like that, so it's those sort of hobby goals, if you like, to see them in that book. That's what makes a book like this so attractive. You genuinely think you could possibly do something close to it. So yeah, that's a great book. Even though it was the wrong book, I've ordered. It's been a great wrong book. And
good,
also,
mate. That's awesome.
Very generous friend, Justin. Hello, Justin. I know he was trolling me after the.
He was too.
He was, He's out of order as that. But he he sort of dug deep in his sort of old hobby supplies, and he gave me this. Look at that.
Brilliant! Yeah, you showed me a picture of that through the week. That's brilliant, isn't it?
You know,
Wow, what a great gift that is, mate. That's worth
I
about
know.
£200 now. That thing, isn't it?
Is
On
it?
eBay, I think it's on eBay. It's probably worth about 200 quid, I'd say.
All right, forget we said
Yeah.
that then.
that'll buy a lot of Japanese whiskey, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, let's hope he's not watching. He also gave me
Oh, the big toad. Yeah, the
big
giant toad.
He's in a new
Brilliant.
box, but he's a big toad, and that's sealed, so that'll be good. You know.
Is that the big Kermit the Frog toad? Is it a different toad on the top? Is it the Kermit?
Kermit Frog
brilliant.
Toad.
Okay,
yeah,
wonderful. The unkillable Kermit. Yep.
Yep. He's going to sing the Rainbow
I know him
Connection.
well. Yeah. That's all you need to give him. You need to give him like a little what's that little guitar called again? That little thing that they play.
Oh, he plays banjo.
That's it. You need to give him the banjo.
Yeah. I have got a ukulele here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to finish my my unit of 20 Saurus. He gave me it's the old Saurus figures, but he also very generously gave me a command pack of the champion and the standard bearer. So I'm going to do those, and then I'm going to treat myself, and I think I'll do the Stegodon, which will be great, you know. So I'm really looking forward to that. So perhaps in a week or two, I can show you those and just show what I've done, and
that's excellent.
Yeah, which is nice. So yeah, but there we go. So what else have you been up to?
Well, apart from doing the podcast, I've been sort of just putting together some epic vehicles. These are called the bubble chuckers. They spit out bubbles from these projectile weapons they have mounted on the back of these little speedster cars from the Mech Boys. So they're really interesting, really old second edition models from good old Kev Adams. If Kev's watching this, he'll definitely recognize some of these old designs. So no, hold on to the camera. Maybe you can or can't see them. These are, really beautiful looking miniatures. Actually, they're all sort of very rounded, and they have great character and very individual in their sort of aesthetic. These great looking models too. These are the Pulsar rockets. They're all very unique and special rules, which we covered in the podcast today. But we didn't actually get to these guys yet because, that's one of the beauties about Epic Space Marine. I know we sort of just talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but books like this, I mean, okay, they're black and white. I mean, they don't look very special on the outside. But once you get into it, I mean, they've got glorious artwork, like something like this from Adrian Smith is just breathtaking. You don't see this in a lot of modern rule books nowadays, like the big war boss knob and that kind of thing, and all the detail, the incredible detail, all in graphite, just incredible. But they've got such beautiful in-depth rules about the culture, about all the different clans, and me and John just really enjoyed just talking about them for 2 hours, basically. Just really in-depth look at the rules for them and how they play in Epic Space Marine. And yeah, I think Epic Space Marine is just my go-to for 40k. If I really want a 40k, dip my toe into 40k at some points, because fantasy is my main love, but Space Marine was a massive thing back in when I started playing when I was about 18, 19, with Chris back in Australia. And we just played it every weekend. We just loved it. It was such an accessible game. Cheap to buy the models for. You could buy big battle box sets or whatever. Everything was in a very small scale, so it's easy to paint. We just played on the carpet on our floors and that kind of thing. We didn't have tables and that sort of stuff back then. The terrain was in the box set. You had everything to play with. It was just a great experience. So yeah, mate, I've just been after having the game last weekend with John, just thinking a lot about Epic, and really want to get back into playing a lot more of it. Trying to get one of the guys here locally to get on board and play Eldar with me, so I can play Chaos, and so just really, really loving it. Yeah.
So was that your first sort of game introduction to sort of Games Workshop games, Epic then, or Space Marine?
I think it was the game that we played the most because Warhammer 3rd Edition, the rulebook was the first thing I got apart from Hero Quest. And then I got the 4th edition box set for Warhammer, which came with a lot of stuff, came with 2 armies and that kind of thing. But to get everything else was quite expensive and not so accessible for us in Australia. So when we got into Space Marine, I think it just became like we went to the store and we could just buy a whole box full of stuff, like full of plastic. and it basically gave you like enough to do like maybe a couple of companies, maybe, gave you vehicles. It gave you lots of other stuff. We could just buy extra Titan or some other vehicles. And my friend Chris he actually made molds for his Orc vehicles and actually molded up stuff in lead.
Really?
Which is kind of legal because he didn't sell anything. He just used it for his own personal use. But yeah, and we just found the rules so fun, and we just found it so enjoyable to play that we just got stuck into it, and we just didn't touch anything else because Chris didn't really like Warhammer Fantasy so much. He loved 40k, he loved Eldar, and he loved the Orcs. So he used to play those. I played Space Marines and I played Chaos as my two main factions, and we just never got sick of it. We just get never tired of it. So we used to play it all the time. And
ironic because it was so small, but it was actually huge, wasn't it? It was huge at the time.
Oh, it's huge, mate. Huge.
Yeah. And I don't know why they sort of let it go, really. I mean, I know a lot of players who were really into it. It was, as I said, it was a way of doing 40k battles on the scale that they were presented in the fluff, really, and in the rules. But, on the table, and as you say, it was accessible, it was cheap, it had a really good player base. But yeah, it just went, didn't it? It vanished. And which is strange. And as you know, I know I think they've sort of set themselves on the 28 mil, 30 mil sort of scale now for all their models. But yeah, it's funny how they never went back to that. And I know there's always rumors, isn't there? There's always, is it going to come out again and that type of thing. But I don't know. It's strange how it never has.
I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think the Adeptus Mechanicus, the new box set they brought out with the Titans, it's based on the first edition one. I think that's probably as far as they're going to go. They might do some vehicles because it's in a different scale. They've got I think it's 10 mil, 8 mil. I'm not really sure. I've never played it myself, but we talked about it, me and John, because he likes playing it. But I think they might do vehicles. I doubt if they're going to do infantry myself, but who knows? You don't know with Games Workshop. There might be enough appeal out there that they can flog it. If they can make $1 out of it, mate, they're going to do it, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So tell me, Crown of Command, how did this begin? How did the Crown of Command, fit on your head, Josh? How did that come
about? Well, that's a really good point. That's a really good question. I think I posted up something on Facebook in the Middlehammer group, and I said, would anybody be interested in a podcast, about sort of this 90s era gaming, and I got a fairly good response. And most of them were pretty positive. One guy said, "Well, what are you going to talk about?" as his response. And I thought, well, that's probably a pretty good point. What are we going to talk about? It's nothing new and fresh. It's kind of old, and we'd have to sort of base it on something. I've always liked the origins.
What I'm thinking about now, to be honest.
yeah, that's right. You're trying to think what the hell to ask me next. But I've always liked the origin stories. I like Meeples and Miniatures. Mike Hobbs, who lives only 20 minutes away from you, a legend in the podcasting. In the podcasting field and gaming field there in Wales. But him and Paul, not Paul, Neil did a podcast that went over a decade, and they always had guests on. They always asked the origin stories, how did you get in the hobby and that kind of thing. And I was always really interested about how they got into the hobby, and I thought this would be a really good way of getting the community involved on Facebook. So I posted up something saying, how did you get in the hobby? This is how I got into the hobby. And man, the response was huge. I had so many people replying about, I got into it this way. I got it through HeroQuest, which is probably the main one, or they got in through 4th edition Warhammer box set or whatever. And it went on and on and on and on. I thought, well, maybe we could make this a podcast and get people's voices on the air, and they can talk about it, and they can share their experience with other people. So that's kind of the origins of where it came from. And then I was thinking about doing, I thought, oh, bloody podcast, like too much hassle. I'm going to pay for this bloody server and all that kind of stuff. I don't know anything about it. I've never done it before. I don't even have a microphone. How the hell am I going to do this? And then one of my mates in Japan, Paul, he just sent me a message, said, hey, do you want to do a podcast? And I thought, yeah, that'd be excellent, because I was thinking about doing the same sort of thing. But he didn't really want to do any of the editing or any of the other sort of background stuff. And we just sort of did it as like a mock-up one evening. I think he had a few drinks too many, And we sort of just talked about, different sort of stuff in the hobby, because I think Paul was getting back into 5th edition fantasy as well at that time. And I said, after I said a couple of days, I said, look, mate, look, how about I just organize all this? How about I run it, and you don't have to do anything at all? You can just let me manage it. And he said, yeah, that's fine. So I said, okay. Then I had to think about a name, and I sort of thought about different names of the podcast. And I thought, as being a Night Goblin player, the magic item that I used the most was the Crown of Command. So that's that's where it sort of originated from, the name of the podcast. And it sort of stuck from there. And I got some great guys through Facebook to help me out with, Dave List to help me out with the logo. So he did all that, because I have no skills in graphic design or anything like that. And then my sister put me in contact with a podcasting platform that I could use to do it. And that's how it all started, and went from there, mate. So, and I think it's...
So how long ago was that?
I think it was in April last year. It was either April or May. And then I think I started with my friend Justin here in Tokyo. We did the first one together, as he was just getting into 5th edition at that time. I sort of conned him into getting into 5th edition, because he's like an old 8th and 6th edition player. And then we did our first interview with Dave Lister, actually, the guy who did all the layout and design for the logo and stuff like that. And that was a great interview, and I think it got a fairly good response. So we sort of just carried on from there, and just got more people from the Facebook community that I'm really good friends with now. And I think out of that, it's resulted in the most positive thing was that I've got to meet so many great people that I'm now in constant contact with, which is just excellent. And I think it's really got a lot more people talking with each other and forming relationships through the hobby, which is wonderful. And knowing where they live, and maybe they know somebody now that lives just around the corner from them they didn't know before, that enjoyed the hobby as well. So once all this, this great plague is over, we can we can get connected again, so so out of the podcast has resulted with some great friendships in the end, which is the main thing.
I think it's amazing as well, really, when you you said you started that back in April last year, just as all this the COVID thing was sort of happening. And I think, without being too corny about it, without being too, sort of twee about it, but I think things like this have become a lifeline for a lot of people, and I think it's great that someone like yourself does this, because there's a lot of people like myself here, we're stuck at home a lot of the time, and we can't go to work too much, or there's a lot of people are relying almost on these type of things, and this growth, and I think it's something to be really proud of, really, at the end of the day, because a lot of gamers are stuck. They lost all their contacts. They're not being able to play games with their regular friends. So to have someone like yourself who's willing to put this in week after week is a big thing, and I think it's great. I really do.
Oh, thanks, man. I think what you're doing is really, really good too. I think it's about at the end of the day, it's about getting people connected, getting their mental health in check as well. Because I think I mean, when you mentioned about being stuck at home and not getting to work, it sounds like heaven to me, because I would love to be at home and just do hobby 24 hours a day. You know what I mean? But I know for some people it'd be not a good situation they're in. Maybe they've lost their job, maybe they lost work, maybe they put a lot of stress on their family and their situation. Maybe they're paying mortgages they can't pay, or they've got bills to pay they've got no support. So if this podcast or what we're doing here is helping them in any way, that'd be so awesome. I mean, that's just great for me. That gives me a real good feeling, if that's the case.
Yeah, it is. And I think that more than anything is what really sort of makes it something special. I mean, there's nothing I like more than hearing, people have enjoyed it, just because it's taken them out of their own sort of world for a few minutes, just here and there. That's why with the storytelling with myself, I've tried to do a story every Sunday. And I always start with, this is the time between times. Let's leave the world behind just for 10 minutes. And as you said, when you get a bit of feedback, then it just says that really, made me happy, or that made me forget about things for a bit. And yeah, I know, without being too corny, that is a big thing. And that's the beauty about gaming. I mean, gaming just lets you go to a different world just for a little bit of time. It just takes you somewhere where all you're thinking about is gaming. And that is a big thing, isn't it, really? I mean, I think Warhammer, in its the way it is, really, it's one of those all-consuming hobbies. When you get into it properly and when you do it properly, that's all you think about for just a couple of hours. And it's almost like a snap at the end, isn't it? Where you just think, oh, right, okay, that's finished. I've got to go. And even though, last week we played that game, and it was the first game of Warhammer I played for a long time. And the first game I played with Justin a couple of times, and my friend Gavin. Last year we managed to get a couple of games in just in these little breaks. But just to play that, and even though I was just on a screen and I could hardly see the troops, and we were relying on each other for the dice rolls and things like that, it still just took me out of the world for an hour or so, and it was great, And all week I was thinking about things that happened in that game. And I think I texted you in the week, didn't I, about the two dwarf generals going down off the hill, in that
lazy buggers.
Yeah, I know, but and it was great, and it just like, wow, it was a story, and it was there, and it was fun,
it was brilliant.
So so I really enjoyed it. Yeah, so well done, and yeah, I hope it keeps growing for you. I mean, you're putting out a lot of output now, and all good stuff, and with a fanzine coming as well. These videos that we do, it's good, isn't it?
Mate, this fanzine looks absolutely incredible. I mean, if you are a fan of the White Dwarves of the early 90s, there's going to be and for the later 90s as well, you're going to see a lot of design and layout that replicates that imagery of that the White Dwarves had at that time. So I hope we don't step on any toes with Games Workshop in the legal department. I've tried to reach out to people in the Games Workshop community about using their artwork and that kind of thing. It's going to be completely free. We're not taking any money from anybody. So I think we're in the clear in that regard. I just didn't want to get anybody in trouble from using their IP or that kind of thing. But we're going to disclaim all the trademarks and all that kind of stuff. So it should be all above board. But yeah, the way it's shaping up, the stuff I've seen the guys do, and it's based on one man. That's Angel. He's from Spain, and he's the one who sort of proposed the idea in the beginning, and he's the main guy doing all the graphic design and layout for it. So we've got people like yourself who are contributing with articles and stories and battle reports and painting guides and everything you would see in a normal White Dwarf. But Angel is the main guy putting it all together visually. So he's doing a lot of work off his own back, taking away from his family and all that kind of stuff just for the community. So a big hats off to him, big round of applause for him for the work he's putting into it. Hopefully we'll have other people like Dave, who's going to help out with the graphical side of things to take a lot of pressure off him, because I don't want him to be burnt out and by the second issue think and just say, guys, I can't do it anymore, kind of thing, blah, 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 which is his own choice. But we're not doing it for anything but just for the joy and passion of talking about these hobbies and that kind of stuff. So I think the first issue is going to have about 40 pages, which is pretty huge. And the second issue is we've already planned a lot of stuff for it as well. We've already started doing a lot of stuff with the second issue. It's going to be bi-monthly, so I think we'll see how it goes. If we need to move it to like every 3 months or every 4 months, that's fine too. I don't think people will be all that disappointed. So we'll just play it by ear. We're sort of entering a new ground here. We've never done this before. I've never been part of a magazine or anything like this before. But Angel is a professional graphic designer, and we've got another gentleman, Gertwan from the Holland. He's a professional editor for a magazine over there. So we've got professional people. We've got ex-GW painters like Stuart Thomas, Dave Perry, who lives in Japan here with us. So he might be putting some articles in there as well for painting. We've got possibly an ex-GW illustrator. They might be submitting some work, but I haven't heard back from him, unfortunately. We've got our own people doing illustrations and stuff for the magazine. So we've got a lot of content that we want to do, a lot of ideas that we want to get across, a lot of game systems that we want to cover. Again, it's just coming into time, how much time people can put into it, like yourself and a lot of other people. But it's really exciting, man. It's going to come out probably in the next, I'd say, 4 days. You're going to see it drop on the internet.
Wow.
So we can definitely talk about it in more detail the next time we get together. But yeah, I think people should feel pretty excited about it.
Excellent. Well, that's good. Okay. Well, I'm not going to keep you too much longer, Josh, but just on the back of that, I did submit a story which I told on here a couple of weeks ago. And I think, there you are with your whiskey, you're all tucked up. It's 1 o'clock in the morning in Japan. So I think maybe we got time for a quick 5-minute bedtime story then. Is it just
absolutely. Mate, we can talk for another 45 minutes, an hour. It doesn't matter. Anytime, as long as you like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was thinking this week, and it sort of got to me. I mean, we told that tale a couple of weeks back about Vander and his attempt to reclaim Carrick-Cigar, and how they came across that in the darkness of the tunnels under the mountains, the old lead belcher, which had opened fire on his troops, run by a goblin, sort of a cavalcade of goblins who was set that up. Vander and his troops came out really sort of second best when it opened fire, and it took a lot of them out. And we left our story as the remnants of that dwarven expeditionary force got up and ready to charge into the goblins that were just manning this horrible creation which they'd set. And behind them, there was a horde of great goblins and lesser goblins and night goblins and all these creatures that were there. And Vander, summoning all his courage, had just rushed in. So let's go back there then, deep beneath the mountains in near Carrick-Cigar, where the dwarf expeditionary force, numbering under 50 dwarves, was just about charging into these goblins. Vander hefted his hammer high and rushed towards it, his small legs covering the ground in a matter of seconds. The goblins and the dwarves hit like the waves on the cliffs of the west, right? And the rumbling and the bang where they hit shook the whole mountain. All around the cavern, blades and hammers and swords rose up and down, and the clang of metal and screaming rang out and echoed almost to eternity. Vander leapt up atop the lead belcher, his feet taking a step on there, and he just stood there and fought, throwing the hammer back and forth. Goblins flew against the wall. One hit against the ceiling. Arms and legs covered everywhere. Green blood splattered him left, right, and center. But he knew, just looking around, that the dwarf line was thin. The dwarf line was small. And every time one of them fell, a bigger gap occurred. And yet, as far as his eyes could see, down this small cavern was packed full of horrendous greenskins. There were nets, there were spears, there were blades, there were hooks, there were everything pushing towards them. And slowly, the dwarves were being pushed back. In the slightest of breaks, the smallest of breaks, the thinnest the second of seconds, he looked down for just a moment, and his heart leapt a beat when he saw that the goblins had actually loaded the lead belcher once more, and an idea sprung into his head. He called for his line to hold for just a few seconds, and he leapt down atop the lead belcher onto the floor and slowly started to turn it round and round and round. Next to him, one of his thunderers let go with a shot from his gun, blowing the head off a goblin, and Vander reached out and grabbed his pipe from out of his mouth and lit the fuse. He called in the highest voice he could, in the loudest voice he could. He called out to his foes after the count of 3 to drop to the ground. And his men did 1, 2, 3. And as one they went down, the goblins rushed forward just as the gun opened and belched its death. The whole cavern was filled with shot. Bits of goblins flew absolutely everywhere. The whole cavern was filled with green blood, and the way was cleared. Vander jumped down, hefting his hammer high in victory, and called out, "Yes! Yes!" Then there was silence. Just the small pitter-patter of what remained of the goblins rushing down the cavern in front of him. There were goblin bodies everywhere. The whole cavern was almost knee-deep, waist-deep for dwarves in goblins. and the lead belcher had turned against them. The dwarves all stood up and cried in victory. Then they brought their hammers down upon this machine that had been defiled by the goblins and smashed it into a million bits so it would never be used again. They hefted their packs and slowly started to make their way down the cavern towards the old city that a lot of their ancestors once called home. It seemed like mile after mile they travelled deeper and deeper into the earth until they felt they would come out on the other side of the world. When suddenly the cavern opened into a world beneath the mountains. As far as the eyes could see, mushrooms grew from all the walls of all the different colours. And there they could see it, the remains of Karak-Sagar. Great towers stretching to the underground sky, all overgrown by mushrooms and underground fungi. The great dwarven halls and taverns, the great dwarven smithies and forges, all of them were there, broken but unbowed. Some of the dwarves rushed forward, hoping to rush into the city, but Vander said, "Stop, no," for he saw something out of the corner of his eye. In between them and the city was a great rock face, one they would have to clamber over. But as they started to step forward, the rock face started to move. And out of the rocks there came hands and arms and bodies and clubs. And he knew with horror that there was one great battle yet to fight, for this was no rock face, but a horde of rock trolls, stepping out from the very earth themselves to do battle with what remained of Vander's force. He looked around, wishing they had not destroyed that organ gun, but they had their cannon, which was still being dragged behind them. He had a small force. They started to load their guns. The quarrelers started to load their crossbows. But in front of them was at least 10, maybe 12, maybe 15 rock trolls. And surely the doom of the expeditionary force. But we will find out when we next tell a tale of Vander's expedition deep beneath the mountain. And there we are, my friends. We shall leave it there for now. How was that? Was that okay?
Mate, it was wonderful. Oh, I love Vander. I love this character.
Yeah.
He's the baddest ass dwarf there is.
I know. The figure is somewhere. It's my quest to find him. I'm going to bring him.
Yeah.
Old dwarf lord with a bald head and a big hammer and a hat with feathers under his arm. Okay, it's from the early...
Yes, Marauder dwarf, mate. That's the one you want.
The Marauder. Yeah.
Yep,
so I've got him somewhere, but I will carry on looking for him. But if anyone's got a Vander they want to show on the website, that'll be great, because that is Vander.
That's it. That's him, mate. I can't wait for the next part of this installment of the story, mate. I honestly can't.
Well, there we are. Yeah, we're putting it out there. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to it, Josh. Okay, you go and get yourself some sleep.
Okay, mate. Well, thank you very much again, Owen, for your time. And please go and check out Owen's YouTube channel. Owen, you want to give that a plug, mate?
Yeah, it's called Time Between Times Storytelling, and it's all Welsh myths and legends and ghost stories and those type of things, all sort of done like this, really. It's just me sat in the chair telling stories. They're all about 10 minutes long. A lot of them are famous stories. Some of them you may not have heard before, but please, I would love to get some subscriptions on there. I'm trying to grow that. Just so that I can get those stories out there. And anyone who wants to follow me on Twitter, it's Owen S. Griffiths. Or if you just type in Owen Staten, it's there. So please come and join me. And any questions, I'm more than happy to interact with you on there. But hey, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much, Josh. And I'll see you soon. You know?
Okay, my friend. Take care, mate. All right. Yeah. Enjoy your Sunday, mate.
I will enjoy my Sunday. I hope the snow keeps falling anyway. I love it. The snow. You know? On a Sunday night, it's the best night to snow. You take care.
Mate. You keep warm. Okay, mate. Take care. Okay. Bye-bye. See you. Okay, bye-bye. Take care, mate.